Welcome back, UPSC aspirants. Ready for another deep dive into the current affairs that matter most for your exam prep?
Absolutely. It's January 30th, 2025, and we've got a packed agenda today covering everything from digital economies to ecological shifts, all with that crucial UPSC lens.
So let's jump right in. First up, something that's been generating a lot of buzz, the MSME team initiative. Bringing 500,000 micro and small enterprises onto the open network for digital commerce within the next 3 years.
Ambitious, right. It's like if UPI revolutionized digital payments, ONDC aims to do the same for e-commerce. Imagine a level playing field where small businesses can go head-to-head with those e-commerce giants.
Amazon, Flipkart, the whole lot. But how does this tie into the UPSC syllabus? What should an aspirant be thinking about?
Well, for starters, the potential economic impact. Will this initiative actually boost growth, create jobs? Then there's the inclusivity angle. Will it truly empower small businesses, or could it create new challenges for those struggling to adapt?
So it's not just about the technology itself, but the wider socioeconomic implications. Those second-order effects are crucial for UPSC analysis.
Exactly. And speaking of analysis, let's move to something that might seem a bit drier at first glance, the RBI's recent interventions in the economy. We're talking open market operations, variable rate repo auctions, U.S. droopy BISL swaps.
I'll admit, sometimes those terms can feel a bit overwhelming. What's the key takeaway for someone focused on UPSC?
It's about understanding the why behind those actions. The RBI is walking a tightrope. On one side, they're trying to control inflation, which everyone's worried about. On the other side, they need to support economic growth. It's a delicate balancing act.
So they're using these tools to fine-tune things, to keep the economy on track.
Precisely. And for a UPSC aspirant, the crucial thing is to think about the potential consequences of those actions. What are the trade-offs involved? Could these short-term moves create long-term vulnerabilities? That's the kind of critical thinking that impresses examiners.
Okay, so always be thinking one step ahead. Now, from economic maneuvering to India's digital leap. A recent MEID study projected India's digital economy contributing nearly 20% of the national income by 2029-30. That's huge.
It is. But the UPSC examiner won't be impressed by numbers alone. What's fascinating here is the unevenness of this growth. Think about the BFSI sector. 95% digital payment penetration, right? But digitization in lending and other services is lagging behind.
It's like we've taken a giant leap forward in some areas, but others are still catching up. How do we bridge this gap?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's one that has serious policy implications, making it ripe for UPSC discussion. How do we ensure equitable access to these technologies? How do we prevent a widening of the digital divide?
Okay, so digital inclusion needs to be front and center. Now let's talk about something that's increasingly important on the global stage, carbon credits. India has just released new offset methodologies for its carbon credits trading scheme.
And these methodologies are crucial for anyone prepping for UPSC. Think of it this way. They outline how projects in renewable energy, waste management, transportation can generate these tradable credits.
So let's say you're in the UPSC interview, and the panel asks you, what are the most promising sectors for carbon offset projects in India? How would you answer?
You'd want to go beyond just listing those sectors. Connect them to India's specific context. What are our strengths? Where are the gaps? Which sectors align with our sustainable development goals? That's what demonstrates a deep understanding.
Okay, so it's about bringing together those different pieces of the puzzle, showing you can connect the dots. But before we get too deep into the specifics, let's do a quick rapid-fire round, hitting some of the other key developments of the day.
Sounds good. But remember, even though these stories might seem diverse, they all reflect that interconnectedness that UPSC loves to test.
Exactly. So we've got elephants returning to Namdapha Tiger Reserve after a decade, showing that conservation efforts, however slow, can work. Then there's the reverse flip, startups like Zepto moving from Singapore back to India for their IPOs.
A potential sign of India's growing economic pull. Then there's the ASER report, painting a mixed picture of education in India. We see encouraging trends in learning recovery and digital literacy, but there's a concerning gender gap in smartphone ownership.
Which links directly back to our discussion about digital inclusion, right?
Exactly. Then there's ISRO hitting a milestone with its 100th launch, solidifying India's position as a major space power.
And WHO releasing new guidelines on lower sodium salt substitutes, balancing health benefits with potential risks. Always important to consider those unintended consequences.
And don't forget the cultural angle, the vibrant Nagoba Jatara festival celebrating the Gond tribe's traditions. Art and culture often pop up in UPSC questions, so it's good to be aware.
Okay, just to show how interconnected this all is, we've got China's DeepSeek AI models challenging Western dominance in AI, raising questions about technological competition and the future of AI itself.
And remember our earlier discussion about the Jevons paradox? That could come into play here as well.
Right. Okay, quickly. Remembering Field Marshal K.M. Cariappa, independent India's first army chief? And then, the discovery of F11 bacteria capable of degrading those forever chemicals could be huge for environmental remediation.
Next, the creation of the first bi-paternal mouse, a breakthrough in reproductive biology with potential ethical implications. And finally, extracting silicon carbide from simulated moon soil, opening up possibilities for lunar habitat construction.
Ooh, that was quite a whirlwind tour of current events. But even in this rapid-fire section, there's a wealth of material for UPSC preparation.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing the significance of these events, connecting them to larger trends, and developing those insightful, well-rounded perspectives that examiners are looking for. All right, welcome back to our deep dive UPSC aspirants. Let's keep unraveling these current affairs and see how they connect to your exam prep.
Sounds good. In part one, we touched on the RBI's efforts to manage liquidity in the economy, but maybe we could unpack that a bit more. It's a topic that often trips up aspirants.
You're right, it can be a bit complex. But remember, it's not about memorizing those technical terms. It's about understanding the WHY. Why is the RBI using tools like open market operations or repo auctions at this particular moment?
Okay, so what's the bigger picture here?
Well, one key factor is the lag effect of government spending. Funds are allocated, but it takes time for that money to actually reach people and businesses.
Ah, so it's like a ripple effect, and that creates fluctuations in liquidity.
Exactly. And that's where the RBI steps in, trying to smooth out those ripples before they turn into waves, so to speak.
I see. But then there's also inflation to worry about, right?
Right. The RBI is constantly monitoring inflation, deciding whether to adjust interest rates to keep it in check. And those decisions also impact liquidity levels. It's all interconnected.
It's like they're juggling multiple balls in the air at the same time. But how would this play out in a UPSC question, say, an essay on India's economic outlook?
Well, you'd want to connect those RDI interventions to the broader economic narrative. Are these measures sustainable? What are the potential consequences, both good and bad?
So it's not just about describing what the RBI is doing, but analyzing whether it's the right approach and what the long-term implications might be.
Exactly. That kind of nuanced understanding is what sets you apart in the exam. Now, let's shift gears back to education, and specifically that ASER report. We talked about those encouraging trends, but that gender gap in smartphone ownership, that's concerning.
Yeah, I keep coming back to that. It feels like a major obstacle to achieving true digital inclusion.
It is. Imagine being asked about this in your UPSC interview. The panel says, can India really achieve its digital aspirations with such a significant gender gap in access to technology? How would you respond?
That's a tough one. I'd want to talk about the socioeconomic factors driving this gap, maybe highlight some potential policy interventions that could address it.
Good. Go beyond just acknowledging the problem. Think critically, propose solutions, and show that you grasp the complexity of the issue.
Okay, that's helpful. Now, let's circle back to the MSME team initiative, bringing those small businesses onto ONDC. It's a big goal, but is it realistic?
That's the question, isn't it? It's one thing to build a platform, it's another to ensure its success. Will small businesses have the know-how to thrive in this digital marketplace? Can they compete with those established players?
It's like giving someone a powerful tool. They also need to know how to use it effectively.
Exactly. And that's where the MSME team initiative is supposed to come in. It's about providing training, support, resources, empowering those businesses to make the most of this opportunity.
So potentially, this could lead to more than just business growth. We could see innovation, job creation, all those ripple effects.
Right. And remember that interconnectedness we talked about. The MSME team initiative links to those discussions on digital inclusion, economic growth, even social equity.
It's like a web, with each thread connected to the others.
Okay, let's switch gears to something completely different, but equally fascinating, the creation of the first bi-paternal mouse.
Now, that's a scientific breakthrough with some serious ethical questions, pushing the boundaries of reproductive biology. Definitely something that could come up in the UPSC ethics paper.
It makes you think, as science advances, how do we ensure its ethical application? It's a debate that's not going away anytime soon.
Absolutely. And being able to articulate your thoughts on these complex issues, weigh the benefits against the potential risks, those are valuable skills for any UPSC aspirant.
Okay, From the microscopic world of genetics to the vast expanse of space. Remember that story about extracting silicon carbide from simulated moon soil? Oh yeah, that one's pretty mind-blowing. Imagine building structures on the moon using materials found right there on the moon itself.
It sounds like science fiction, but it's a sign of how rapidly things are advancing. And it makes you wonder, what other possibilities does this open up?
Right. Could this be a stepping stone to further exploration of the solar system, even? Thinking ahead, understanding those future implications, that's crucial for grasping global trends.
And it's something that UPSC examiners love to see.
Okay, let's bring it back down to earth for a moment. We talked about that discovery of F11 bacteria, those forever chemical eaters.
Right, those PFAS chemicals are a major environmental concern. If F11 bacteria can break them down effectively, it could be a game changer for cleaning up polluted sites.
It's amazing how nature often holds the solutions to our problems. But for a UPSC aspirant, this raises questions about the practicalities of bioremediation.
Exactly. How scalable is this technology? What are the costs, the regulations? Thinking critically about those aspects is what sets a well-prepared UPSC candidate apart. Okay, from the microscopic to the monumental, ISRO celebrated its 100th launch recently. It's a testament to India's growing strength in space.
Right. And remember, it's not just about national pride. Space technology has real-world applications. Communication, navigation, disaster management, these are all areas that are relevant to UPSC.
So we need to think about the future implications of this milestone. Will India become a major player in the global space economy? Could this lead to even more advancements in space exploration and technology?
Those are great questions to consider. And remember, UPSC is looking for candidates who can not only understand current events, but also analyze their potential impact on India's future.
Okay, let's take a quick detour into culture now. We mentioned the Nagoba Jatara festival, a celebration of the Gan tribe's traditions. It's a reminder of India's incredible cultural diversity.
Absolutely. Understanding the significance of these festivals, their historical and cultural context, that's important.
It's about appreciating that these events aren't just celebrations. They're expressions of identity, community, and continuity.
Right. It highlights the importance of preserving and promoting India's rich cultural heritage.
Okay, and finally, remember that story about China's DeepSeek AI models challenging the West in artificial intelligence? That's a development with some serious global implications.
It is. The AI race is heating up, with multiple players vying for leadership. And it raises questions about the future of AI, its potential impact on various sectors, and even that potential for a Jevons paradox.
Right, it all connects back. From digital inclusion to the environment, from scientific breakthroughs to cultural celebrations, it's all interconnected.
Exactly. And understanding those connections, analyzing their implications, developing those well-rounded perspectives, that's what will help you excel on the UPSC exam.
All right, welcome back for the final stretch of our deep dive, UPSC aspirants. We've explored a lot of ground, from the intricacies of the RBI's actions to the potential and the pitfalls of India's digital leap.
And we've grappled with some ethically complex scientific breakthroughs. But there's one more crucial area we need to delve into, one that's at the forefront of global concern, the fight against climate change.
Okay, so we touched on India's carbon credits trading scheme, but this feels like a topic that deserves a deeper dive, especially for those aiming to ace the UPSC.
It absolutely does. Remember, the UPSC examiner isn't just looking for someone who can parrot facts. They want to see analysis, critical thinking. So let's break down this CCTS, not just as a scheme, but as a strategy.
Right, because it's essentially creating a market for carbon emissions.
Right.
Companies can buy and sell the right to pollute up to a certain limit.
Precisely. And the idea is to incentivize emission reductions. If it costs money to pollute, companies are motivated to find cleaner, greener alternatives. But here's where it gets interesting. How does this scheme fit into India's overall climate goals?
Right, because we have those ambitious commitments, reducing emissions intensity and achieving net zero by 2070. So is the CCTS enough on its own?
That's the question, isn't it? Imagine you're in the UPSC interview. The panel throws this at you. Is the CCTS sufficient to meet India's climate targets? How do you respond?
That's a tricky one. I'd probably start by saying that the CCTS is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. It needs to be combined with other policies, right? Like promoting renewable energy, energy efficiency, sustainable practices across industries.
Excellent point. And you'd also want to bring up those potential challenges. Will this carbon market be robust enough? Will it actually incentivize innovation or just create loopholes? That kind of nuanced analysis is what sets you apart.
Okay, so it's about showing that you understand the complexities, the potential downsides, as well as the benefits. Now, shifting gears to something that might seem unrelated, but trust me, it's not. The potential for a Jevons paradox in the development of artificial intelligence.
Yes, this is a concept that's fascinating and a bit unsettling. Remember, Jevons argued that even when technology increases efficiency, it can sometimes lead to higher consumption of that resource.
So even though AI can make things more energy efficient, the overall demand for computing power, the data centers, all of that could increase, offsetting those gains.
Precisely. And this is something to consider as AI becomes even more ingrained in our lives. How do we balance the undeniable benefits of AI with its potential environmental footprint? It's a question we'll be grappling with for a long time.
Okay, so from the global implications of AI to something much closer to home, let's revisit the RBI's efforts to manage liquidity in the Indian economy. We talked about the tools they use, but how would this play out in a UPSC essay, say, on the challenges facing India's economy?
This is where connecting those dots is crucial. The RBI's actions aren't happening in a vacuum. They're influenced by everything: global economic trends, domestic inflation, even political considerations.
Right, it's all interconnected. So I'd want to analyze those factors. Is the RBI's approach sustainable in the long run? What are the potential risks? Are there alternative strategies that might be more effective?
Exactly. That kind of broad analytical approach is what the UPSC exam is all about. It's about understanding those complex interrelationships, not just focusing on isolated events.
Okay, let's do one final rapid-fire round just to highlight some of those other key developments. Remembering Field Marshal K.M. Cariappa, independent India's first army chief, his legacy continues to shape the Indian military.
Then we have that incredible discovery of F11 bacteria, those forever chemical eaters. It could be a game changer for environmental cleanup, but as we discussed, there are still those potential challenges and implications to consider.
And finally, that mind-blowing scientific achievement extracting silicon carbide from simulated moon soil, paving the way for lunar habitat construction. It's almost like science fiction becoming reality.
It really is, and it shows how human ingenuity can push the boundaries of what's possible.
So there you have it, UPSC aspirants. Another deep dive into the current affairs that matter. Remember, it's not just about knowing the facts, it's about understanding the why and the so what. It's about developing those analytical skills, connecting the dots, and crafting insightful perspectives.
Exactly. Stay curious, stay engaged, and keep those minds sharp. Because the world is constantly changing, and the UPSC exam demands that you keep pace.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the most relevant current events. Until then, keep prepping, stay informed, and best of luck on your UPSC journey.